In this video, we will be talking about, how we're just at the brink of war in the Middle East, the latest WikiLeaks revelation, more insane stories coming out of Hollywood, how the elites are destroying any chances of peace and prosperity, and some actual good news at the end of this broadcast. Now, I think the most important story to cover today is, of course, the turmoil happening right now in the Middle East, as we're learning that now ISIS is retreating from its last stronghold in Syria, the terrorist organization that was state-sponsored by the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. And with that brutal civil conflict finally coming to an end in Syria, well, it sure looks like another one is starting right now, as Saudi Arabia has just issued a major statement telling its citizens to leave Lebanon immediately. Now, it's important to note here that we predicted a lot of these situations unfolding 2 days ago in our video called Secret Leaked Cables Prove Major Geopolitical Storm, which I definitely recommend watching for context on this story. Now, of course, with this latest announcement by Saudi Arabia and also Kuwait issuing similar warnings to its citizens, many, of course, suspect the possibility of war because of this. Now, it's important to note here that just a few days ago, the Lebanese Prime Minister fled to Saudi Arabia, where he announced his resignation because of fear that he would be assassinated in that country, and then openly blamed the Lebanon-based Hezbollah paramilitary and political movement in that country, and of course Iran, for, quote, attempting to bring destruction to the region. Now, we're seeing a very similar trend here with the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia always pointing the finger at Iran, like the latest ballistic missile launch over Saudi Arabia's capital, which Saudi Arabia said was an act of war by Iran. They also blame them from the meltdown of Lebanon's internal politics, and of course supporting Hezbollah, which they have ties to. And of course, this hasn't been highlighted in the mainstream media, but it was Iranian forces and Hezbollah forces that were a major part in destroying ISIS inside of Syria. And now with Hezbollah and Iran having a bigger influence in Syria and Lebanon, right on Israel's border, Israel, of course, is going out of its way to deter them and push them back, even as going as far as bombing Syrian government forces recently and Hezbollah forces inside of Syria, showing how this bigger push right now is actually being done in coordination with Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United States, which many experts say will bring on an economic war, but could soon become an actual war, which of course brings in a bigger dividing line that has been happening for centuries between the Shia Muslims, which are predominantly influenced by Iran, and the Sunni Muslims, which are again predominantly pushed by Saudi Arabia, highlighting a bigger geopolitical crisis between these two nations, who, by the way, are already involved in a proxy war against each other, currently in a bloody conflict in Yemen, where just 2 days ago, Saudi Arabian airstrikes killed over 30 civilians, a conflict that is becoming unwinnable for Saudi Arabia, no matter how many schools and hospitals they hit, and is showing to be a major economic factor to their downfall, which many people are speculating was the reason behind the recent purge in Saudi Arabia by the Crown Prince, since the net worth of the richest members of the Saudi royal family were confiscated by their government, and is leaving many people to speculate that this purge was mainly an economic move to sustain the Saudi empire, which is failing and knows that oil will not be the future of economic prosperity for them, as they themselves are trying to achieve a post-oil economy, which is going to be impossible for the Saudi state to do because of its geopolitical positioning, the fact that they have to import food, that they're going to run out of natural water, that they have a massive welfare state and other economic conditions that really prove that Saudi Arabia is broke and on the decline of their empire. And just like we said 2 days ago, the death throes of a declining, failing empire is always, historically speaking, war. Now, it is very interesting to see U.S. President Donald Trump actually support the House of Saud and their current leader behind this latest purge, especially since Donald Trump previously said before that Saudi Arabia was the world's biggest funder of terrorism, that they're using our petrodollar, our own money, to, quote, fund the terrorists that seek to destroy our people, while the Saudis rely on U.S. to protect them. He also previously said that they were the ones who blew up the World Trade Center, criticized Hillary Clinton from taking Saudi money, even challenging her to return it, and even publicly argued with the Saudi royal family. But ever since taking office in the United States, he took a 180-degree turn, with now many Trump supporters and even alternative media figures playing defense by saying that no, Donald Trump is strategically working with Saudi Arabia in order to make sure that they promote moderate Islam and not the Sunni Wahhabist Islam that they have been promoting building schools and mosques all over the Western world, which surprisingly have been a major hub of terrorism in the West. I digress. But for me personally, this new Donald Trump supporter defense, the kind of 4D chess explanation for Donald Trump's coziness with Saudi Arabia doesn't make sense, specifically because Saudi Arabia has been promising this for years, with the US mainstream media regurgitating it, with even one journalist regurgitating the same press release for literally over 15 years. And yet it still hasn't come true, which of course should make everyone skeptical of it and not just buy into the promises that were made years ago, never kept, and still are being pushed by now alternative media. Now, small strides have been made in Saudi Arabia, but the country has also taken steps back, and with their influence and financing of American politics, are really just allowed to do whatever they want, including using our petrodollar money to finance terrorism that we then have to spend $5.6 trillion on fighting, while they lie through their teeth about it, enrich themselves while destroying peace and prosperity for everyone else. And that's why these latest aggressive moves by Saudi Arabia, which by the way are being backed by the United States and Donald Trump, is something that we need to focus on because the repercussions of those actions will be severe. Now, exactly what will happen, we do not know. We're hearing rumors that the Saudi Arabian king may now stand down, but of course that hasn't been officially confirmed. The situation is of course highly unpredictable, but of course we will be keeping a close eye on it to give you the latest news and not mainstream media disinformation or even alternative media cheerleading, but just the truth of what we see actually happening, developing right now. Moving forward on yet another lighter topic, let's talk about the pedophiles in Hollywood. As we're learning that even a Reddit user exposed Kevin Spacey as a pedophile years ago after seeing him with a shirtless boy in Thailand, the sex tourism capital of the world. We even have a former Boston news anchor who came out and accused Kevin Spacey of assaulting her 18-year-old son, one of the many people who are coming out right now speaking out against this actor. Charlie Sheen was even accused of sexually assaulting Corey Haim when he was just 13, which of course he categorically denies. And with all these allegations, too many to even mention now in this video, it might be possibly true that maybe one or two of them are false accusations, but the story still is clear that there definitely is a pedophile and sexual abuse major problem in Hollywood. That of course we documented how the media, politicians, and even local police departments are either covering up or involved in this matter, and are allowing this to happen, which needs to stop immediately. And as we learned yesterday from Corey Feldman, who announced yesterday that the LAPD will now begin an official investigation into those people who sexually abused him when he was a child actor. We are now finding out a day after that announcement that today the LAPD will no longer be investigating it because of statutes of limitations that expired and no longer allow him to press charges. And I don't know about you, but I don't think we should have statutes of limitations for pedophiles. We're also finding out that the Republican nominee in Alabama is right now being accused of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old when he was 32 years old. We're also finding out that comedian Louis C.K. is prepping for an expose that is soon going to come out in the New York Times about him, which of course they're taking very seriously and even canceling his movie premiere in advance of this story that's going to come out against him. That a journalist even came out and said that she was shut down previously before when she tried to report on the behavior of Louis C.K. And already there's so much information coming out against this wider, bigger problem in the upper echelons of our society that of course a lot of us know goes a lot deeper. So just understand this is only the beginning of this major problem that the world is finally seeing the truth about. Okay, continuing on with more secrets being revealed, we have WikiLeaks coming out today with their Vault 8 release, specifically publicizing how the CIA wrote code to impersonate Russian hackers, Russia's cybersecurity firm, the Kaspersky Lab, that develops software in government, civilian, and military agencies, which allowed them to hack the antivirus software, directly pointing a finger at cyber espionage. Something we should all think about next time we hear a mainstream media Russian hacking story. And now in some positive news, well, sort of positive, we have the former co-founder of Facebook, Sean Parker, the man who made billions off of Facebook, basically came out today and called the company evil, saying that Facebook was built to exploit human vulnerability, calling it a social validation feedback loop, saying that the company wants to consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible while exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology, which he says Facebook knew all along, and gave us a warning saying God only knows what it's doing to our children's brain. Well, pretty much destroying and frying them, making them socially inept human beings that do everything for social validation instead of, actually living a good life. Moving forward, in other good news, we're also finding out that the United Kingdom will now back a total ban on bee-harming pesticides in their country, which we know the number of declining bees have been leading to an ecological disaster that, hey, at least one country is trying to address. So yeah, that is today's news broadcast. If you know anyone who is not privy to this information, please share this video with them. I, of course, look forward to your comments down below in this video, and of course, thank you again for everyone who goes to wearechange.org/donate and helps keep this independent media organization alive. I love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching.